All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samu?
Winter's Heart, the finale. And
Yep,
we should
just
be able to get through this pretty quick because it's not a whole lot left. I mean, a lot happens, but
just a couple chapters left. We're on chapter 32, A
I don't
Portion of Wisdom.
I don't think a lot
Um,
happens that we can overanalyze. So we should be able to get this one
exactly.
in quickly.
Um, which was kind of my thought looking through it here. I've got a couple of um kind of overall thoughts before we get to the finale. Um, and one of those thoughts actually ties into why we're able to go so quickly through the the ends of the books, and yet it takes us 2 hours over the prologue and one chapter to start the book because he sets things up. It's amazing how good a finale is when you actually have set up what is going on, unlike our last session where we were both very bleh, in large part because this occurred to me after we were done recording. It kind of dawned on me. They have said the word several times and they have mentioned, oh, it brings back dead heroes to fight, but it's all in passing. They never really bothered to set up how important, how big a deal the Horn of Lear was. And it's one of the major pieces, not only of that book, but of the whole series. And they just don't bother to set it up. And here, as usual, you have it, now it's not as complex as a lot of the other books climaxes. Like Fires of Heaven is one of the big ones to me, where you have all of these pieces converging into Camelin, where you have two, completely different storylines with Rand and with the girls, and yet they end up at the same place. But it makes perfect sense that they end up at the same place. It makes perfect sense how they end up there. It's not just, oh, somebody said we should go here, so let's go here.
Mhm.
Even
Or
here,
Matt needs to be there. Beam me up, Lanfear.
exactly. Beam me up, indeed. I believe the last chapter is called what is it? No, that's not it. With the Coden Call. Okay, that was set up in book 2, and here we are at the finale of book 9. That's how deep the setup goes with this. So we know what he's about to do or what he's about to use. We don't necessarily know how he's going to do it. He said, I'm going to cleanse the taint. We know that it's possible just with the raw power of these Saw and Greel that, okay, how's he going to do this? But he's got plenty of raw power because it's been set up for so long. We also know because we've set up um which book was it where was it the prologue of this book? Yeah, it's the prologue of this book where the chosen are told he's going to try and cleanse the taint, and that he has the code and call, so he has enough power to do it. And how big a deal that is, because maybe the Dark One won't trust you as much anymore
Mhm.
if he doesn't have a leash on you.
which
So,
which to me actually was a little bit, yeah, it was to set up this ending, but I didn't like
mhm.
that as much because he's doing it in a way that was supposed to be unexpected. And Moradin seems to already have figured it out when there's no way to have figured it out unless you were slashed by the dagger over the other wound. And that's
Mhm.
how he figured it out. So some information Moradin's not privy to is what caused the conclusion. And I don't
Ah,
know.
but is he? Because remember, another piece that has been set up here that hasn't really been fully revealed, but you've been given enough hints to know, Rand and Morden are somehow linked. They can somehow feel each other. They can somehow sense each other. So perhaps Morden is feeling the wound. And
No,
he's
maybe.
remember, he's the philosopher. So he should be able to figure this out quicker than Rand could, because he's the philosopher, and if he's feeling that wound. But we'll get there, because so my first kind of lesser overall thought that I find amusing when we're in uh formatting here, and one of the reasons Jordan has to
Well,
be canceled is
let
because,
me
isn't it funny? Go ahead.
yeah, I want to get to that because it's going to be about the dynamics of the city, and
Exactly.
that is a huge thing with this whole chapter. And I had thoughts on that too, but let me interject here because we before we completely after this we could probably just instead of except for little snarky things here and there kind of just dump the show because we're done with the second season and we've bitched and
Hmm.
moaned about it uh
Hmm.
ad nauseum in the last episode. But this is Morden is something that can't happen in the show because of how Ishii portrayed himself of wanting to die
Hmm.
and then how he just let himself die in the end because
And he
the way that
certainly seemed to think that was the end.
yeah, and the way that death works in this is you can be reincarnated and
Hmm.
all of these things can keep going, which is the whole point behind the Dragon Reborn, which is why him just getting stabbed doesn't make sense to actually die. And the reason Moradin exists is because Ishii didn't die the final death he wanted to die. And he knows he needs to break the wheel in order for that to happen. So Show Ishii just
Exactly.
wanted to die. This Ishii actually
So I could
understands
certainly see them bringing more to,
he has to live
exactly.
long enough to
Right.
break the wheel.
Exactly. Now, I could certainly see them bringing Morden in because they just don't care about setup. They don't care about consistency. They routinely break their own rules, their own setups. Um, Speaking of rules, that's actually something I want to talk about when we get to the end. So remind me about that. Of one of the reasons it works is because Jordan knows how to establish rules so that he can then break them. Um, but I think you know where I was going here at the beginning of this chapter, or the beginning of this finale, chapter 32, with Rand in an inn, um, looking for these people, and uh, he's got these sketches that I think we kind of skimmed over that, but that was something that was interesting and I think kind of important, that Rand has never been an artist, and he knows that he's never been artistic, but Luce Theron was. And so now suddenly he can draw these very accurate portraits of these people he's looking for. Um, which is just a further kind of clue, a further step, speaking of step, setups, a further step in establishing what is going on here with Rand and the Luce Theron voice, what that means
Yeah,
and what that
it's more than
is.
just a voice in your head. It has actually become that actual person is becoming a part of you.
Exactly. And the amusing thing to me about the opening of this chapter, like I said, that we didn't really get into too much detail in, is that isn't it interesting that people are people, and whether they're men or women, they're a-holes, or they can be. Because look here, we have a matriarchy. Men are completely subservient in this city, because of how it was established, uh, and because of the long history and tradition of it. And yet that doesn't stop. That doesn't make it idyllic. It just makes it different.
Mm-hmm.
Again, one more reason we have to cancel Jordan, because he understood people, and that's why his writing feels so real, because in a way it is.
Well, and there was actually a slightly annoying moment in here because Jordan did the modern audience thing here. Because it's one thing to have a society set up this way. It was another thing
Mhm.
with every merchant that was talking was dumb and the woman talking to him was smart. And I was like, Jordan, come on. You could have at least had one of the merchants be
Well,
right.
see, I didn't read it that way. Like, so I assume you're talking about some of the overheard conversations here that
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Rand is hearing.
It
Um,
reminded me of those red flag commercials where the girl is always right when they go check the replay. It's
See, what I read it as I always interpreted it as him reinforcing the power dynamic here, that these outsiders have no power, that they have to be, um, in
but they were
in
also
much.
always wrong. It wasn't about it wasn't about
Meh,
what authority you have. They were saying something ridiculous and then the lady was like, have some sense.
well, see, the one of the ones I don't see that at all is, okay, they're wrong in that. So there's page 691, one of the overheard conversations is a formatting merchant sitting with some outsider merchants, and they're concerned about a body that was all swollen and black. And because we know what that is, that was the Shadar Logoth dagger. And there's concern that there's a plague in a city. Well, she's being demeaning, but they're not wrong per se. I mean, they're wrong about the facts, but they're not wrong in the conclusion they're drawing that
Mhm.
there could be a plague here. I mean, what else would it be? You've got a body that's swollen and black, and the council ordered it burned. So their concerns are fully valid, but she is so arrogant in her position that she has no qualms about. I mean, consider the power dynamic here. You would think she would at least, even if she holds all the cards, you would think she would at least be respectful because she has to do business with these people. But the matriarchy, the power imbalance is so ingrained in these people. She has no qualms about being, you know, frankly flippant and rude to these people she has to do business with.
Yeah, and there's two dynamics here that whether he did it on purpose or not is irrelevant, but it's slightly ironic that the city that's run by women is the one where physical strength would probably be the most advantageous because the power can't exist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it also is on the flip side of that unironic that the city that is a control freak over the environment around it is run by women. Because
Mm-hmm.
men, when you talk about difference between men and women, control is a universal thing, but men think of controlling themselves within the environment, and women think of controlling the environment around them. That look at parenting. Guys are, you watch your kid climbing a tree, you kind of sit there, let him explore, and say, well, give them a couple pointers here and there so they're better and more proficient at it. But mom tries to take away the tree because it's dangerous. And
That's a good point, and it brings back Varen trying to scare the counselors by bringing up ancient history of, I believe it was Gwar Amalison, who 1,000 or so years ago laid siege to Farmatting, and it's not completely clear if he actually took the city or not. That's left a little vague, but with what you say, basically Varen is sitting there reminding them, hey, you feel very comfortable here because you're wealthy, because you have a very advantageous geographic position, but you're not invincible. And if somebody comes here with strength, like the Dragon Reborn, someone with massive armies, they can crack this nut here that seems invincible, but history has shown you are not invincible. And to that point, I think I can't remember if it's there or somewhere else where they also mentioned that Farmatting is a city state. It used to be a nation. It's a city state because of its advantageous geographic position. It's a large island in the middle of a lake. So it is very defensible when you're talking about a place where the power can't be wielded and there's no gunpowder yet. So
mhm.
it's almost impossible to lay siege to. And very few people would want to because they can get more from trading with them and through them than from trying to conquer them. But this used to be a nation, and they lost all the surrounding area that didn't have that advantageous position. And I think that's part of what Varen was doing, was reminding them of that, not just specifically, reminding them of the potential threat the dragon poses, but you're not as invincible as you think you are. Your arrogance will end up being your downfall. And in a way, it is. The arrogance of the first counselor is her downfall here at the end.
Which is funny because she's pretty much, other than Cadsuane, the only Aes Sedai that has the moral authority to be able to give that lecture without it being ironic.
True. All right. So then kind of the other big thought here over these couple of chapters before they leave Farmatting is um, you have a lot of action happening, and you have it's all logically follows from the who Rand is becoming and who Lan is. and then also Nynaeve thrown in there of who she is and her strengths and weaknesses. So this is a great example of show don't tell, because he doesn't have to tell you, because he's already established this both from telling and showing in 9 books here. So when Rand, Lan, and Nynaeve go to get these men that Rand needs to kill because he's concerned about them coming after him, that this makes perfect sense that they would do this. Uh, it also makes perfect sense that they would have these blind spots that ultimately leads to the problem that Cadsuan has to fix.
Mm-hmm.
But to Nynaeve's point, okay, this is, yeah, maybe I should have thought this through a little bit better, but maybe you could have been a little more open with your information rather than always keeping things so close to the vest. That had you bothered to explain things fully, oh yeah, I might have realized, no, we can't do what we think we're going to do here. We can't get away with this, which ultimately is what happens. Um, and I think I think there's maybe a purposeful parallel there between uh, Cadsuan's. She is very capable. She's perhaps the most capable Aes Sedai in the whole series, but she still has that arrogance that we've talked about. That because of that, it contributes. I won't say it leads to, but it contributes to what happens to Rand and Lan here, because she's not trusting Nynaeve. She's not bringing her into her circle, in part because she wasn't raised properly. And then what's going to happen with the first counselor, with the way Cadsuan basically takes her out because she has to, because she needs to get Rand out of the cells, and she's regretful because, much like Cadsuan, she knows this is a very capable person, this is a very capable leader, but Rand is more important. And so if I have to take you down, if that's the only way for me to get Rand from you, that's what I'll do.
Mm-hmm.
And she's able to do that because, again, the I can't remember her name. The first counselor feels so comfortable, so invincible in her position, that she can't anticipate, you know, an Aes Sedai who can't channel can't possibly be a threat to me here.
Yeah, and this is
And
where
Cadsuan turns all that on its head.
this is again, keep being canceled as male female moments, is as a soldier, we're, yes, your leader should build trust, but at the same time, you don't venture outside the plan too much, because you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And as the soldier, Nynaeve ventured outside of the plan, and her own ignorance caused a big problem. And as the leader, you have to understand who you think in your group would be the most likely to venture outside of the plan. Mm-hmm. And you have to either make sure that they know explicitly that there is a plan here and you need to not do certain things. Or, in this case, what Nynaeve wanted, and this is the female part of it, is you have to be able to explain it to them in a way that's not going to cause them to put their heels down, So, mm-hmm. Yeah, again, faults on both sides, but at the same time, this wouldn't have happened in a male group as much because the soldier wouldn't have ventured outside of the plan. The hierarchy is already established.
The hierarchy is, yeah, a great example of this. I've used Band of Brothers as an example a lot, because it's such a great moment both in history and a great moment in storytelling, that watch those first couple episodes where they show the planning of D-Day, and leading up to that planning, when it's revealed what the mission is, it's study these maps, study these sand tables, and not only learn your mission, but learn all the units around you's mission in case things go bad. So because the hierarchy is established.
Yeah, think of the mindset you have to have. I mean, just think of that opening scene from Saving Private Ryan, where all these people are coming up on the boats and you can see the other boats and them getting mowed down. And if you're the guy in the front, the thought of what's the plan here has to not be in your head, or you're not the guy in the front, because you're right there ready to get mowed down. The plan is to just keep throwing people until you can get control of these bunkers, and you're one of the people being thrown.
And there's a contrast here with the Axis side, because one of the things that made the German army at the end of World War One and the beginning of World War Two so potent is because they gave a lot of leeway to the lower level commanders. In fact, you were expected as not just, like a colonel or a general, but even down to the company and platoon level, you were expected to execute initiative. So it was trained into you to see something. If you see something, you exploit it. You take that initiative. But as the war dragged on and as Hitler became more and more paranoid, he started coalescing more and more power around him. In fact, there's a great parallel there with Alida, because that's what she does
Mm-hmm.
with power in the White Tower. And so nobody knows the plan. Nobody is allowed to have initiative. And so when something goes wrong, it goes terribly wrong because there's no one to pick up the slack. All right. Any other thoughts in before we leave formatting here?
No. It, there's really it shouldn't have been a surprise. It was Patton Fane. Just hearing about the
Mm-hmm.
body that they
Mm-hmm.
found, and then the scrawled note, and he comes in there. So I there was no indication that Rand had figured out it was Patton Fane until he confronted him. I think he should
Mm-hmm.
have, uh, or Land should have put together the bloated body too, having been around Matt and Warren and everybody in that
Yeah.
situation. But so that was a little. I think cognitively we could have respected the characters a little more there, but. I mean, other than that, the interesting thought I did have when I was reading that was we get our first real glimpse, other than Match and Shin coming up in that camp where Torum was first fighting Rand in the duel, that Padden Fane is starting to have a control over the dead, over the spirit, with bringing the ghosts of the two people he just killed at Rand to distract him. So that was something
Well, there's
interesting.
also an element of I don't know that Jordan ever explained exactly what is going on here, but remember, and I think this was referenced somewhere. We saw oh, I brain farted on his name. The guy himself, kind of the avatar of the avatar of Shadow Logoth when they
More
first
death.
meet him in the Mordeath. We see him use some kind of illusionary magic when he makes himself puff up and then when he disappears through the small hole. So he has some sort of ability to mess with people's minds, and which would include, and we know that because of his corrupting ability. So somehow that extends into also being able to make you see things that aren't there. So I think that was also, and when we see Rand kind of dispel the illusion, I think that's kind of a clue that he either knows or has figured out what's going on here. So this has been established, but kind of, and again, we overanalyze because it's almost nothing is by accident. It's not as clear as the power and the taint because it's so much more unknown how that works. But we have a setup here with Pat Fane, with Mordeath and the power, the dark evil, the counterpoint evil of Shadar Logoth, and he's about to use that here to cleanse the taint.
Yeah,
So I
and
don't.
I think it's
It's not
important to
an accident
establish.
that this
Yeah,
shows up here.
yeah, it's important to establish that connection that the two evils are different, but they're also connected. And
Mm-hmm.
you could almost even say that we're talking about cleansing Sadar. It's a transfer. So when we talk about like I jumped in an ice bath this morning and I warmed it up by 5 degrees. So five, about 750 calories from my body transferred into this cold water, right? He's transferring the taint to Eridol is what he's ultimately doing here, but you have to have a
Mm-hmm.
connection to it for that conduction to happen. And if we have no access to basically death, which is because Eridol lived on after everybody died. So we have to have access to death itself for this to happen, which would be the connection between the Dark One and Eridol. So if we don't have that connection there, we can't conduct one to the other. And so basically they're forcing the conduction of the taint into the human evil, and it implodes. I don't.
Last
Yeah,
thought.
metaphysics doesn't always come out as smoothly as it ran in your head, but
Right. So last thought on that before we get into the actual cleansing, because there's some funky, interesting metaphysical things going on here that just, one more little tidbit of awesomeness here is Rand and Lan working together, and it's a great fan moment because they've been separated for so long. But once again, Jordan took the time to set things up. He established that mentor-mentee relationship between Land and Rand, and now we get to see them working together basically as equals
well, not only that, you
because
get a
of how much
moment
Rand has.
that tells you Rand's not too far gone. He risks
Yes,
his life to save Lan.
and makes a snarky joke while doing it.
Yeah,
When I mean, it's one of the I like your point from the very beginning about how Rand is the middle between Matt and Perrin. He's got a little bit of both in him, and you see that here with his snarky comment of when the sun turns green is his answer to, rather than just saying no, you know, he does still have some humor to him. He does still have that humanness to him, doubly so because not only is he not going to let go, he's not making the pure calculation here, but he does it with a joke. I'd never really thought about that before until you just said about pointing out how he's not that far gone yet. And I think that is, again, purposeful, that it's not just that he doesn't let go, it's he does it with a joke.
yeah. I didn't think about the joke, but my kind of thought on that was everything he's been doing where he's becoming inhuman is because he knows he needs to live to the last battle, but he knows he's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Here is a moment where he basically says, "If you die, I die."
Mm.
When he still knows he needs to make it to the last battle. One is purpose driven outside himself. The other is purpose driven within himself. I'm going to save my friend.
Yeah, yeah, and it's his humanity overrides the cold calculation there because Lan is as it has become as important to him as his Two Rivers friends are.
Which was why it was important to lose Moraine at some point,
Mm-hmm.
because she would have made the decision. You're more important.
Yes.
That's why Lan is a warder, because he is meant to die for the more important cause.
All right. So then on to the actual finale here, and um, I do.
Sorry, Amazon Wheel of Time. Moraine was actually a bad influence on Rand in the actual books, because she's the one that
It
first gets
was.
him down the road of
Uh-huh.
the only thing that matters is the last battle.
Exactly. And that's why it's so poignant. That's why her death is so poignant, because she finally realizes it at the end, but it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Because she finally realizes what she's done and that she needs to be a different kind of mentor to Rand. Not a drill sergeant, not a master, but an advisor, a
Or the
real
person
advisor.
pointing the gun is what she was.
Mm.
She was trying to make him into a gun so she can point it at the last battle.
That's a good point, and that's an analogy that is used, not a gun, but that he is a weapon
Mm-hmm.
to be pointed and wielded by the tower.
Well, again, this is where the Aiel are bad influences, because they consider themselves spears.
Yes.
They are the spears, and then Fate is the chucker, not them.
Mm, that's a good point. It's also something we didn't spend a ton of time on, and maybe we can go back to it. Is it's one of the reasons they shatter the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
For all of Cerelia and Cadsuan's talk about strength versus hardness, the Aiel have hardened to themselves, and when they are suddenly confronted with, "Oh, you're not who you thought you were," it breaks so many of them. All right,
Yeah.
so
Let's quit
before
overthinking and get to the last battle, then we can overthink
so that
again.
we can overthink. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we start to delve into this last chapter, I will say there is a bit of weakness here to me, which is for all the setup, the way the Forsaken come at him. I understand why they do it, but it seems a little anticlimactic to me. The way they come at him, first of all, they don't all show up, and then they don't go straight at him. Now, it is set up with there's a genuine fear of he is wielding so much power. If he turns that against me, he can extinguish me from existence. So there is that legitimate fear of just how much power he's wielding. That they have to proceed cautiously until they can figure out what is he doing and how do I stop it without, because Jordan has established that except for Moradin, the prime directive of all the Forsaken is self-preservation. That is basically why they all turned to the dark in the first place, for different reasons, but it was to preserve themselves for whatever their goals
And
were.
also on another layer to the onion here is they're all still looking for a way to take out Morden. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just self-preservation, it's becoming the Nigh Bliss and taking that position from him, and they know their master. Yeah, he says don't do this, but he also rewards the people who take a risk and come out successful. So it's it chaos is the point. I mean, that we had a whole book on it, right? Chaos is the point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is where order, and I don't think Jordan did this on accident, order of the events actually matters, because who would have been the most useful Forsaken in this instance?
Lanfear.
No,
Really?
Samael. You just talked about how they came in willy-nilly with no plan. Who is the
Mm.
battle master of them all?
See, I was thinking of it more personally than that. I was thinking no, because Lanfear does show up, dummy. She is
Yeah.
Sindane by this point. That she knows Rand. She knows Luce Theron and Rand more than any of the others. So she I think is probably the weakest part of this, because well, but then again, he does give you at least some reasoning to it, because she's so overcome with rage at this point that she's not the same person she was in the Great Hunt
Mm-hmm.
and subsequent books until she got knocked through the doorway, because she seems to have finally let go of the obsession with Luce Theron, and now she just wants him to die because he has betrayed her too many times.
Well, not only is
Um,
betrayed her, but she imagined it as the perfect match because she was almost a perfect woman,
yeah,
and she considered him the perfect man. And now that she's been knocked down to something lesser, she wants to kill him because
mm,
he ruined that dynamic. That dynamic
that's a good
could
point.
Lanfear and Rand, or Lanfear and Luce Theron, could never exist again because she's no
Yeah.
longer Lanfear. So it's it yeah, but even just a coordinated front with Grendel and Samael would have changed this whole battle.
That's a good point, and it leads me to another, slight negative in this finale, which is that Demandred is one of the ones who doesn't show up. And to an extent, there is an element of contrivance there, to your point, because lacking Samael, then Demandred should be the one tactically considering the best way to attack this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not there. Now, come to find out way later, there's good reasons he's not there, because where he is and what he's doing makes it very difficult for him to get away. And he has said that before, but here would have been, either in this chapter or in the prologue of the next book, would have been a good time to drop a little hint, a little nugget of where Demandred is and what he's doing, rather than leaving it so blank until the very end. Um, but there's another little slight negative. Now on to the. Did you want to get metaphysical here? Because to me, this is one of the more interesting parts of this chapter, and it was. it's one of those things that didn't necessarily uh sink in until a couple of reads, because what is happening here is very difficult to visualize. Not physically visualize, because he Jordan does paint pictures with words very well. So you can see the mechanism that's happening here, but how it does it is a bit odd. Because to your point, it is rather metaphysical, not physical.
Yeah, well, I connect this to her accidentally healing the stealing because
Mm,
she had to deal with something that she could kind of feel was there, but didn't couldn't see it and couldn't but also then combine that with why she's the person to do it with her ability to heal with all five powers, which is
that's a good point.
which was one of the things that was necessary. And then combined to that, the other layer that Jordan established by this point is you need a woman to heal the man. And so you combine all of those things together. Basically, she's feeling around Satan. She's pulling the sickness out of it, like she would in if she healed somebody that had been poisoned. And then the metaphysical part that with Eridol was you needed somewhere place to transfer it. It's you can't just pull it out and leave it sitting there in the world because it would
That's a
be the
good point I hadn't
cesspool of
considered, was
destruction.
what was Nynaeve's healing of Logain as a I hadn't really considered that a setup to this before. But thinking back to that, when she first figures something out by studying Logain and so on, it it's described as a sense of something missing, a sense of a cut, or a vacuum, a black hole of nothingness where something should be, but it's not something she necessarily sees or feels. She's able to feel once she gets a better idea of what's going on here, but initially it's something she senses, she feel, she intuits rather than physically feeling. She emotionally and kind of intellectually feels it. And that's a lot of what is happening here.
Yeah, and when you look at her and Rand are the two doing this, remember when we have one woman and one man linked, the woman is in control. So Rand is basically just a power conduit at this point. He is just supplying muscle to the woman's skill, is what he's doing. And so, yeah, I think all those three things together are why she was the person. Because Katsuan, they even say, doesn't even have a real affinity to healing at all. And the only other
Mm-hmm.
woman strong enough is Olivia, who just knows how to blow things up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so his little speech there, where if this goes wrong, we could crack the world like an egg, and Luce there is like an egg. Yeah. Well, you put the battle person in there, they'll probably crack the world, where
Mm-hmm.
Nynaeve is the epitome of healing, right? That is her
Yes.
character. She's the one who, so she's the most powerful person who has the aptitude to cure something. So Rand is the is the muscle, she's the skill plus the muscle, and the power is the fact that she has to extract this thing from something she really can't see, and there has to be again that conduit. She has to have something to put it to. It doesn't just go out into the world, or else evil would just fly over all the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other interesting metaphysical part of this, that he kind of touches on and doesn't fully explain, I think it's just kind of there to, make your brain hurt, is contemplating infinity is something that the mortal mind has difficulty with.
That's why we create
And
gods.
that's he kind of mentions that here through Rand's point of view is, how do you know the power, it can't be used up. So it is infinite. Well, so then how do you siphon something off of it? Because then it too should be infinite, but it's not, because it was created by the Dark One, who is a more finite being than what we assume the creator is. So somehow these two unknowable ideas are able to come together and create something tangible.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, and it's another driver home that remember they always comment the greatest things done in the Age and Legends were because they worked together. and we needed this thing that is going to hopefully save the world. We
Mhm.
needed to work together as a man and male and female, and the two actual closest people from a relationship standpoint that could do that are Rand and Nynaeve, because there's no clouding influence of love, of puppy love, but there is enough trust between the two to give in to each other and to trust each other to do the task. So you couldn't have Egwene and Gawain do this. Well, we need someone who could channel. Who are two people that are lovers that can channel? The ones that,
Well, there
oh,
we
it
have
would
it.
be a spoiler. It would be a spoiler if I brought them up, but
Well, we do by this point we do have the Ashaman who have been bonded as warders, and it's strongly hinted that
Rand and Elaine.
Sumeko,
We couldn't have
yeah,
Rand and Elaine do it because they have this other element to them that makes them stupid in the brain, right?
mm,
Whereas Rand and Nynaeve, yes, they love each other in that we grew up together, we were
but it's
kindred spirits,
platonic.
but it's platonic. I need to pause this for just a second. Hold on. Sorry for the hiccup. I had to go lock the dogs in for people to be in the backyard. But one thing I forgot to say, and it kind of popped in my head while I was doing that, was Rand also had to be there, a male half, not just because there's a male and female part of the Chosen Call, but you needed part of that weave to be male to have the taint present to be able to pull it out.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
there's the fourth element to it all.
You did say something earlier though that struck me as I don't think that's right, and I was flipping through it here, and so page 743 ish is where no 742 is where it starts the with Rand and Nynaeve linking and pulling through the code and call and you know what's actually happening here. And this is something I'm still a little bit confused on, despite how many times I've read this series. I thought you were right that because I don't remember who it is, but one of the Forsaken makes a comment about linking. Like I think it may be like Lanfear talking to Ravine or something, but he wouldn't do that because then he would lose control. But Rand is actually the one directing the weaves here. But Nynaeve is the one that has to initiate it. So this is
You
where the
said
rules are a little
742.
fuzzy to me. Yeah. So Rand or Nynaeve initiates the link. So she has Rand get right on the edge of grabbing the source, but don't actually get it. And then she pulls Sidon through him. So she creates the link by finishing that connection between Rand and Sidon. And but then she somehow transfers control to Rand. Rand takes control from Nynaeve. And he's the one who's actually directing the weaves, which I find odd. It's not how I thought the rules worked, and it's one of these things that's still a little fuzzy to me. Um,
Well, on 743, when they finally do link, she still has control.
mhm.
And then she makes the comments of, "Oh, how can you take this?" Bleh,
Yep.
in uh and then he
But
makes the
then
comments of
she,
how
yep,
Sadar feels like you just started doing something together.
yep. Um, but then he takes control from her, and she's annoyed because he was supposed to wait until she was ready, but that's not how Sidon works. You just grab it. So he's trying to struggle with, uh, as it says somewhere in here, is the uh, yeah, down at the bottom of 743. That was the first difficulty, and this is from Rand's perspective: to fight Sidon while surrendering to Sidar. The first difficulty and the first key to what he had to do. So he's the one controlling the flows, but I don't know if that's because Nynaeve surrendered control to him after she initiated the link. But this is something I wanted to touch on, which is that, and I'll use an analogy here to writing, because I was recently talking to my daughter about this when it comes to essay writing. that when I first moved back to Lavernia, I was in a really good position because I had been fortunate enough to have a phenomenal honors English teacher my freshman year in high school, who was very strict about proper writing and what those rules were. And so we would write an essay every week, but he forced you into a lane because it could only be one page because he wanted us to get used to the structure. He didn't want these long-winded, 5-page essays. No, one page, where you've got a strong opening, a clear thesis, and then you have a short body, and then you have a conclusion that ties it all together. He was also very strict about don't use be verbs because they're lazy. Find another way to say it, along with all the other general rules of grammar. And it let me, you know, uh, like when I first got there, there was this essay competition. I don't remember who it was said you should do this, so I did. And the teacher committee that picked the winner was just blown away about where did you learn to write so good? And to me, it was just that's how I wrote because that's just how writing worked because that's how I was trained. The reason that's so important is because even in great literature from great masters, you will find and people will make fun of, run-on sentences or, starting a sentence with in a way you're not supposed to. Okay, but that works because they follow the rules the rest of the time. So when they break the rules, it stands out more. It's more impactful. Well, one of the reasons this whole scene works is because Jordan has spent 9 books setting up the rules for how the power is supposed to work so that now he can kind of in a way break the rules. And he was already, to your point, he was already kind of setting up how he's going to break the rules by introducing Shadar Logoth and then the wound at Rand's side. That because there is now this new element that exists outside of the yin yang of Sidar and Sidon, I can now break the rules.
Okay, so
So,
I'm gonna have to change my a little bit of my thing as the conduit to put something into. He's thinking of salt.
hmm?
Sodium, a highly reactive metal. Chlorine, a highly toxic gas. Sodium chloride, table salt. He basically made salt out of the taint and Shadar Logoth.
Mm, it's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of it that way. I was thinking of it as two negatives canceling each other out.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what happens. That's what we were talking about the whole time, and that's the gist of it. But he made salt. He basically smashed two things together using a lot of energy and made something benign out of it.
Yep. Uh
Well, what got me thinking of it because
anyway,
the description of the beating, the point counterpoint,
yes.
the way he
Yes.
was describing it, I was like, that's like a positive and a negative charged atom coming together, and
And, and there's an element of that with Sidar and Sidon
he was
as
a
well.
physicist too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what he got his bachelor's in was physics,
Yeah.
which is 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 why he establishes rules. So the power works in a particular way,
But
and that
even evil works in a
matters.
particular way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the dark one is pure entropy. So even he has rules, even though it's pure chaos. But even there are rules for how the pure chaos works.
I
And
think we've got
and
our meme for this episode, by the way.
and as Rand is setting this up, he's thinking not just about the point counterpoint to the wound, but also the ebb and flow of Sidon and Sidar, that they kind of naturally want to flow together in their own kind of point counterpoint. And when he
Well,
creates
I don't know that I don't
this
know about that though, because of the way he describes them working together, it's like they're trying to push away from each other.
yes, but that's the yin yang circle. They go
Mhm.
together, but they push against each other. It's described as the power. What the power is what drives the wheel. So essentially, it's what drives the universe. It's that, you know. it's that alike yet different that creates this perpetual motion machine. And so when he creates the
Water that
tube,
pushes the wheel, H2O, two women and one man is the optimal circle. Maybe I'm overthinking this.
there's no such thing when it comes to Jordan and Wheel of Time. But
Hey,
when
you
he's
you in the audience, Scott, and the maybe one or two other people that made it this far. Just imagine if we took mushrooms or something before this. Y'all are
oh
lucky.
yeah.
We're doing this without any of the crazy. We'd probably get to the
Uh
end and be like, my buzz wore off. That was 8 hours. Oh,
all right, so the kind of the final point here, halfway down 744. So this is when he's forming the conduit. He thought of it as a tube, at least, though it was not. The weave did not form at all as he expected it, as if Sidar had a mind of its own. And it doesn't have a mind, but it does have rules. So when it forms, the weave took on convolutions and spirals that made him think of a flower, and so it snaps into place in the way that it's supposed to, the way it works according to its own rules. So even though he doesn't really know what he's doing because he's never wielded Sidar before, and because it's so different from Side In, it still works because it has its own rules that it follows. But then moving on from that point, this is where it gets interesting and metaphysical, uh, which is there was nothing to see, no grand weaves sweeping down from the sky. The source lay at the heart of creation. The source was everywhere, even in Shadar Logoth. The conduit covered distance beyond his imagining and had no length at all. It had to be a conduit, no matter its appearance. If it was not, let's set that aside for a moment. But the idea being the paradox of, you know, everything and nothing is basically how this works. That this is how he's kind of bridging the idea of the infinite, is by creating this paradox of everything and nothing, of everywhere and nowhere. And it's why the whole kind of how I said that the crappy finale that we talked about on Wednesday, that whole series could be summed up with that awful final scene, that final shot, and how lazy, forgettable, and bland it is. And up to this point, this finale can really serve as a snapshot for why the whole series works. Why have we reread this so many times? Why are people still 30 years later posting on message boards with theories and ideas? Because he gives you so much meat on the bone that you're going to be sitting there like a dog gnawing on it for a while, and then an idea will pop in your head and go, oh, I hadn't thought about this before. Oh, does this connect to that? Because there's so much going into this one little scene that you can go down an infinite number of rabbit holes trying to think things through.
well, I think part of it is he talks about infinity. Well, we've already got a taste of that through the portal stones,
Mm.
where we got infinite lives. It's like the multiverse, but in a with the magic, with kind of the religious element of this world, uh, and he's basically just tapped into that.
Hmm. All right. Any other thoughts here?
Well, we go on to the individual little battles. I don't know how much you want to go into those because Elsa's an interesting one because we know
Yeah.
some things about her. Uh,
Um, yeah, I like um I like the short little kind of vignettes here where he cuts from person to person to person, with just every once in a while kind of glancing back, and he's set up the incredible feat that is going on here already. He doesn't need to really dwell on it. So he just cuts back occasionally. And I like that you don't often, he doesn't often go back to Rand or Nynaeve. It's someone looking at them and thinking and drawing the contrast of it's just two people sitting cross-legged staring at each other on a hill and they're not doing anything. So you have all of this going on and yet it's nothing visible. It's just kind of reinforcing the metaphysical idea here. Instead, to keep the action going, he's hopping from person to person as they're trying to defend Rand. But then also we get the two little scenes of the randos who are walking by the full size statues, and the orb starts to glow.
Mm-hmm.
I do like Elza's extra fun because um, I'm not getting the names mixed up, right? She's the one who's actually Black Ajah, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's why.
she's the one who's
Yeah, that's why I say
she's
she's
the one
the
who
extra.
kills
Yeah.
Dashiva, which I that's one of my favorite scenes because it's such kind of anticlimactic comic relief, in the kind of Greek tragedy comedy, the Greek comedy kind of way, uh, where it's not like funny haha, it's funny where Dashiva settles in just to watch and he's not really going to put himself out there because why should he? So I'm safe here, and then he gets blown away. He gets immolated by some rando Black Ajah who thinks, "Oh, this is just a renegade Ashaman. I can attack that person." Oops.
Yep. But it also
Um,
puts a little cap on this whole book because
yeah.
I mean, it starts and ends with Rand and his hunt for the rebel Ashaman. So now we've
Mm-hmm.
just killed the fifth of the five
Mm-hmm. Yep.
in a
So that
in a slightly paradoxical way.
and amusingly because it's debatable whether or not she would even. So does Rand even know that they're all dead yet? Does Rand even know that Dashiva is dead after all this? So it's one of the few times that Jordan actually completely wraps something up, and even then, there's a little bit of gray area.
Yeah, well, and it's also she swears because she knows her oaths mean nothing, so she can get in, so she can avenge her warders as part of it, not just because she's black. And she ends up helping him by killing one of the Forsaken and one of the goals of this whole book
Mm-hmm.
on accident.
Um, on a less amusing note, though, I'd kind of forgotten until I was skimming through, and as it's beginning, Eben Hopwell comes up and takes the reins of Rand's horse, and he makes the comment, smiling, like giddy. Remember, this guy's still a teenager. He just barely started shaving, and he's giddy that and says, something to the effect of it'll be great to finally channel without the taint. That always makes me want to turn my stomach. It'll be great. And he dies. He dies defending the Aes Sedai that he's linked with
Mm-hmm.
because
Halama was there.
they come up
Yeah.
on this bizarre sight of a buxom woman in a nice dress and jewelry just strolling through the woods, and it's odd, it's confusing. But then because Eben is there, he's the one that realizes, holy crap, she is channeling Sidon. And so just like a boss, physically, because he can't channel because he's stuck in this link, physically launches himself at her to distract her long enough for his Aes Sedai to do something about it. It's one of those many great little moments of all these great small characters that Jordan writes and that he makes feel real. And then, you know, when we will complain later on in the series about these small characters, it's when they don't get a satisfactory ending. It's when you find out that someone is dead basically off screen. Because what you really want is this. This is someone who has been referenced for quite a while now because he was one of the early arrivals at the tower. I believe he was one of the first ones either one of the first ones at the tower when Rand goes, or one of the first ones that Taim reports is no, it wasn't him. It was Narishma who had the spark. But Eben's been there for a while, and we've seen him. He's been referenced, and now he's dead. But
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is bittersweet because he has his own moment. All right. I didn't have any other thoughts on this. Um, except where is it? This is something that we won't go into too much here because the next couple of books will actually kind of reference this. The aftermath of the cleansing, and it's so anticlimactic. This last little paragraph here. Night fell. On the hilltop, the wind blew dust across the fragments of what had once been a Tarangriel. Below lay the tomb of Shadar Logoth, open to give the world hope. And on distant Tamalking, the word began to spread that the time of illusions was at an end. So that time of illusions thing, that's going to be something kind of bigger-ish down the road. We'll talk about when we get there, but just the scene of emptiness and kind of wind blowing over nothing after something that should be, emblazoned across the sky, news should be spreading, yay, we're saved, the taint is gone. And yet, because of the way the world works, both technically the ability to spread information, but then also because of the factions, the politics, the uncertainty, the mistrust, it's not going to have the impact you think it would. He's basically telling you there, yeah, don't expect celebrations in the streets. That's
Mm-hmm.
not how this world works. That's not how the world works. So instead, you have perhaps the most arguably the most momentous thing to have happened since the breaking is what just happened here, and yet it instead of cheers and celebration, it's silence and emptiness.
That's why I put the Great Reset up, because we were tainted for a little bit, and coming out on the other end, we're going to have
Oh, is that it?
so much
Okay,
loveliness, right?
great. I was wondering what that and actually the one that I was wondering about was Subtle Leopard
Subtle
of why
Leopard.
that's
Oh,
up.
well, we had Lan and Rand doing their thing.
Yes,
And
yes.
we have Lan off scene, just like in New Spring, winning the battle. You know, and you can just imagine the greatest sword fight of your life, and that's all you need. You didn't need a description of it.
Yeah, it works because you've already established who Lan is. You've already seen him be awesome. So he doesn't have to show you because
Mm-hmm.
he has shown you enough. All right. Well, that is that for Winter's Heart, which is a much more satisfying ending than what we talked about Wednesday. Um, Sadly, we will be going into Crossroads, which is one of my least favorites. And from what I've seen online, a lot of the fans agree that it was kind of a meh book, uh, hampered in part because Winter's Heart is so good and so much happens in it, and so much of what Crossroads is just set up
Mm-hmm.
for what's going to happen in the following book, and then the
Which means
on
not
to the
all
end of the
yeah,
series.
which means not only is it kind of a mad book, but we're going to take forever to get through it because we take forever to get through the setup stuff.
Yeah, it also may mean we haven't had big spoiler sections for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we might end up going back to spoiler sections that are as long or longer than the actual book talk. If we have things we want to talk about before we forget them, because so much is being set up
Yeah,
in
and I think
Crossroads.
today we really don't have any spoilers because it kind of ends in a very
It ends.
definitive
Yeah, it
spot.
has an
Yeah.
actual ending.
But we do have some
Yeah.
comments, and oops. The first comment I want to address is I usually disregard pronunciations that I don't agree with, but one thing you both do that bugs the hell out of me is it's Daman, silent E, not dominant. Although
Oh, really?
it's about slavery, it has nothing to do with the practice of BDSM. I don't know where that came into it, but I have a screen to share, a picture to share. This is from my copy of The Great Hunt Here's the word, and here is the pronunciation guide. The answer is we're both wrong. Damon E, not Damon A, not Damon.
Hmm.
So it is Damon E, and I will try to get it right, but I've never seen a language where a single E makes an EE sound. But I'll have to look at the old tongue explanation guide in the cheat book back there to see if that's consistent. But here is the official from Jordan himself in the back of Great Hunt, where we meet the Dominie. So yeah, there we go. The answer is we were both wrong.
Yeah, that'll be difficult to remember. I don't know how long it. I don't think I started pronouncing Fail correctly until we started doing this.
I did, but it was on my second read through. Or my second full read through, the one I did just a few years ago, when the one where I finally finished the series. So I read
I
through from the
I don't
beginning to
remember
read
where
the
the
last book.
BDSM came. I don't know. Remember where the BDSM came
I
in?
think he's I think
Except
he's I think Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but you listen to these, you don't actually watch them, and it might sound like we're
mhm,
saying dominant because he says that in there, dominant, like
uh,
putting the two together. Uh, but no, it's Domini. Oh, so Domani. The emphasis is on the middle syllable there. But
I know we did. I did bring up when we were talking about the series that they're trying to make Lanfear look like a dominatrix.
yeah,
I remember
we did talk about
BDSM
that.
coming up there.
But that this is on our reread episode, so
Yeah,
this wouldn't be in
yeah.
response to
I've got
that.
the comments pulled up now.
In class divided feudalism, it is common to prohibit edged weapons to the peasants, hence quarterstaff, clubs, scythes, blah blah blah. Oh, because this is when we were talking about ninjas and uh,
Yes, and part of Matt's awesomeness is the just taking a stick and beating people up with it.
don't take anything the show has as canon. Of course, yeah, I think we're pretty clear on that.
Yeah.
All it proves is Rafe Judkins is an idiot that cannot understand something as deep as RJ's writing. So this is where there might be some pushback on that because now we're implying intent. Intent is always something hard to prove. Rafe Judkins, from a fan standpoint, looking at him, looks like an idiot that can't understand the material. But from a career development standpoint, he's actually being the smart
Mm,
one because if he's not
mm.
doing the things he's doing, he is not a director or a show producer or a showrunner for very long.
Well, I think what he's um, referencing there is at some point, I don't even remember how I got on this, but I was referencing, I made a point that either uh, the not just Judkins and not just Wheel of Time, but things like Rings of Power and other and The Witcher and things like it, either they're not smart enough to get it, to understand why it works, to understand what the original authors said and why they said it the way they did, or they don't care. And there's definitely ample evidence to support that they don't care. If you look at what the obnoxious Witcher showrunner had said about, uh, you know, even before it came out from people who worked on the show, that they openly despised the source material. She said things in interviews that weren't openly despising, but were quite condescending to the source material.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who think this is Dunning Kruger stuff. They think they are smarter than these authors who I tried. I remember when we first started, I tried looking up the numbers and it's a little fuzzy, but the Wheel of Time series may be second only to the Lord of the Rings in worldwide sales. It has sold a lot. And Lord of the Rings is especially egregious because it's been around for over half a century. So not only has it sold a ton, but it's been around for longer than you people have been alive. And yet you think you're smarter than the authors who were able to create something so impactful. It has long lived past their actual physical death, but you think you're smarter than them and can make it better.
Mm-hmm. Well, and yeah, so that begs you to wonder where Rafe falls into it because we brought up the feminist articles about Wheel of Time. on how it's a great series, but it's problematic. And here's
Mhm.
all the things that are problematic about it. If he's one of those, then he's a true believer and he's an idiot. If he actually does like the source material, but he knows he's trying to navigate a system that doesn't allow you to be true to it, that's another story. Now, where we can probably agree that he's being an idiot is some of the fixes to try to keep the fans in there, like we just
Mhm.
discussed with the finale here of the last season, are very, very, very clunkily done. They're like we just, I think we used a lot more words to say it, but it's like they still have their own story, but they throw in Easter eggs to make you think, to try to make you reminiscent of the real story. And it's
Yeah.
it's not oh, I don't know. It's just, I hate to prescribe intent on anyone. My prescribing of intent for Rafe is that he wants to be a successful showrunner. Where that takes you
Yeah. Yeah.
with where his abilities are and everything, I don't envy his position if he is a true fan, because there's no way you can stick to the source material and actually put it out there unless you have a producer that says that's cool. You got to where the money's coming from matters, where the production value is coming from
And,
matters.
yeah, and we don't know. I mean, I've read some articles about kind of what a mess Amazon Studios is. I don't know so they're the main overhead studio, but then I don't know the studio that's doing the actual physical production. I don't know what they're like, but we do know from things that have been written previously is that Jennifer Salke is a true believer. It's why she canceled Conan. When she first came in as head of Amazon Studios, she told the showrunners for that, who I'm brain farting on his name, but one of the guys who went on to revitalize HBO and Game of Thrones with House of the Dragon, she said, you need to change this because it was too true to the original source material, which, if you've seen any of the classic illustrations of Conan, oh no, that's sexist. That's super problematic. And they said, no, this is a brutal world and we're leaving it like that. Okay, well then we're canceling this.
Yeah, and
So we do know from the very top there that that is definitely something that is being pushed down into some of these productions.
and even on a point of integrity. So let's look at an example like Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill got into The Witcher thinking he could be a good influence on how it was presented on the screen. And about a season and a half in, he realized there's nothing I can do because no one's listening to me. And in fact, they're making it harder and harder and harder every step of the way. So, peace out, brothers. I tried to fix this from within and I couldn't. And he made that very clear. Now he's also in a better position because everybody loves Henry Cavill. You know that he's got fans. He will never want for a job. He will always find a production that will take him. Rafe, on the other hand, who the hell knows who Rafe is except us who are complaining about him?
Well, and and to your point, if he wants to be a successful showrunner, there are politics involved, and not in the kind of politics we rant about on Wednesday, but in kind of the office interpersonal politics. One of the I referenced this big expose on Amazon Studios. I can't remember if it was Hollywood Reporter or Vanity Fair who it was, but one of the things they pointed out in there that they had from sources is that um, what was it? Was it Citadel or Peripheral? I don't remember who it was, but it was one of those shows that they knew early on was a bust and a money pit. It was very expensive, but it got a second season greenlit. Why? Because the main producer was the brother of someone important, and they didn't want to make that guy mad.
What what shows like this need and they'll never get is a producer like Jerry Bruckheimer who actually wants to create a good product. And yeah, there will be some, a little bit of wokey stuff in it, but there will also be balance, and it's actually built around the story. He'll throw a thing in here or there that kind of placates to the powers that be, but ultimately he wants to create a good show. He wants a CSI. He wants a Lucifer. He wants a show that people will remember, people will love, and people will actually get an emotional engagement with. We don't get that here. And I'm, Rafe is kind of the whipping boy of it, but I'm going to say put the blame on the producers. They're the ones that set the tone. They're the ones that set the expectations.
That's a really good uh, counterpoint because Bruckheimer, the old school guys like that, they are first and foremost storytellers. Even if they are not personally the storyteller, they know how to set up the creative types for success. That's not what's happening here in these modern studios. These people are activists and political types first. And so any storytelling has to be done within these very narrow confines.
Mm-hmm.
This book works because Jordan wasn't answering to anyone but his publisher, and he had enough cachet even at that point,
Well, yeah,
and the
back
publishing
then,
industry had become
yeah.
completely woke.
Yeah, the good
that
news
that
is he came on in the late 80s, early 90s when everything in here was considered progressive at
you
that
know
time. And
and so when he would have arguments with his wife, who was his editor, about something, it wasn't about anything. It wasn't about something because it was problematic. It was about, does this work? Is this the best way to tell the story? That's what arguments were about. That's what discussions were about. They weren't about anything extraneous to the story.
the last
All right.
was that the last comment? Oh, yeah, the
Now, the
last
last
comment
comment is
is
about
Tuan.
Tuan.
Yeah, Tuan has ideas about Matt, at least partly based on her Omen speaker, what her Omen speaker told her on the
Mm-hmm.
ship, which is true. And actually, this is a good dynamic. That this is definitely spoilers and comments, because as we see Matt and Tuan go forward, you see a different in personality, but a similar story to Min and Rand. Min knew she was going to fall in love with Rand, yet she fought it and still succumbed to it. Tuan is in a different situation where the omens said she's going to be a certain way at a certain time with certain people, but it's still very vague, and it is kind of a religion for them. Min hates her power. She's established that in her own head.
Yeah.
Tuan understands this as a metaphysical thing, a fate oriented thing, but it's still a lot of vagaries. And so to
That's
her,
a
this
good
is a
point.
this is a puzzle. And so she's
Yes.
seeing the connections with Matt in the omens, and now she's curious. And we get that
So,
from her, the way he describes her face and everything. It's a
uh,
curiosity at this point. She hasn't developed the feelings yet, but it's a curiosity. And so Min fighting the feelings still ultimately develops the connection. Whereas, which is completely so Rand, fight it, fight it, fight it, but still end
that's an
up
intro. Yeah, I
becoming
hadn't
it.
thought about
Yeah.
that.
Where same with Tuan and Matt, there's a curiosity there that ultimately becomes something bigger.
Okay, so
Matt's curiosities led him into the doorways, led him into all of these other
here,
situations.
here's maybe a better way of explaining that I just popped into my head when you said that is Min resented and fought against it until she succumbed, until she realized I can't fight this fate, and I kind of actually do like him.
That's why this book is
So,
problematic, because maybe
yes,
it's cold outside is rape culture. So
exactly.
yeah.
Tawan, rather than fighting against fate, she's testing it. And that's I think backing up a second, I assume that's where this comment came from, is because I remember I was saying something that was leading up to that, and then I kind of ran myself into a brick wall as I realized, oh wait, I don't think the part I'm thinking about, that didn't happen yet. That happens in the next book, of something. So we know that there was this omen, this viewing, this telling, whatever it was, and it made Tawan mad, and she punished the Damani. Damani, she punished her
Mani.
for it, and then felt a little bit guilty over that. Um, but we don't know all the details to it. We just know, we suspect from her reactions to Matt that something about Matt is figuring into these omens. And
I
you
bet
see
you it's
that
as
from her messing
detailed
with the
as the
ocean,
ring he bought, which has a fox chasing after
the
ravens.
the
That's
ring. But
yeah.
but remember, she's also messing around with his spear because it has the ravens on it. So that again could be part of the omens. We get something more explicit later, where she asks him a direct question. She kind of directly challenges him, and I hadn't really thought about it until you brought up the parallel with Min. Is that Tuan doesn't she doesn't have powers that she hates. She is fully bought into this tradition, this folklore, whatever you want to call it, of the omens, and so she's testing them rather than fighting against them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why she treats Matt the way she does, both in this book and then going forward, because she wants to see if my suspicion is true. Is this really the person who fulfills who is going to fulfill this prophecy, this foretelling, whatever it was, based off of the omens that I'm seeing? She's testing.
Which again, I think the parallel in personalities is important too, because like I said, that was so Rand. Fight it, fight it, fight it, fight it,
Yeah, I hadn't thought
grab
about
it
that
and take
before. Yeah.
control, where Matt is the curious one. And it just you would think Tuan and Matt are so opposite because she's so authoritarian and he's so freedom loving,
Mm-hmm.
but there's that shared curiosity between the two of them that we're like, that's interesting. Let me explore that a little bit more,
That
even though I might get my eye poked out or my hand burned.
I with what you're saying, that I suspect we're going to end up on some tangents, and these first few chapters of Crossroads, because I believe after the prologue, I believe it starts with 3 or 4 chapters of Matt. Um, this goes right into what we were listening to the last time I was down there, and we were talking about the idea
Which
of
one, the
what
Gad
Gad said
Sad?
was,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
the idea that um you don't have to. So, for instance, you don't have to have the same political views. You don't have to agree on politics, but you do need to have the same core values. Now, you can interpret those values different. You can express those values differently. You know, I'm a registered Republican. I'm a registered Democrat, because you express those values differently, but you still have the same core. And that's why you make a good, that's what makes a good partnership. And so, to your point, Matt and Tuan are seemingly opposites attract, but they're not really. They just express that core very differently.
They're kind of the same person from different cultures.
Mm.
Because you even get in Min, not Min, Tuan's mind a few times coming up in this next book, which is again, this was a good comment to end this book on,
Yeah.
because it is a good setup for the next one, where she's not like all in on the Empress. She's actually got thoughts in her head of how she was planning on supplanting the Empress, as people do there and kill each other all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, everything's
Yeah.
so orderly on the outside, and it's actually good for the people in that way from a safety standpoint, but at the same time, they're all like killing each other all the time.
It's a terrifying mess at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's why the peasants are so happy in Shanshin and everywhere they take over, because they're sheltered from the internal politics, and it's actually bad to be the blood.
It's a good point. All right. Well, we'll delve deeper and deeper into that next time.
Especially if
It's
you're
a,
Turok and you fight Rand and he kills you in one blink.
uh,
That was
so
that I mean, there were so many disappointing parts of that episode. That was probably the most. I saw that and I was like, okay, Rand coming up to Turok. That's one of my favorite parts of the Great Hunt, is that fight. And it's a nothing burger. And it was
I don't
just,
remember if I said this out loud, but I was thinking it. I remember bringing up The Witcher season 3, which I keep forgetting exists because it was that unimpactful to me. But at least between Henry Cavill's natural physical ability and whoever does the choreography for those fights, I could at least pay attention during the fight scenes of season 3 of Witcher and be momentarily entertained. I was bored out of my mind through the whole of that episode. And even though it was mostly fight, it was mostly action scenes, but the action scenes were so bland and stupid, they didn't entertain me.
yeah, but you could see individual differences. Like I was really optimistic and I still am. So I'm trying to find every little good thing I can, because there's no big good things. but the guy who plays Masuma actually knows how to fight. And you could see that in
Well,
the scene
that
where
was one of the
Ingtar
disappointing
didn't know how to
things. Yeah.
fight. Ingtar,
Yeah.
you could tell the actor was just taught that day. It was,
Mm.
or if he wasn't, he's not a very good student. But so it was. You could see the differences between those kind of things. I would have loved to have seen the at least a little bit of the Balsamon Rand fight instead of him just saying stab me, because I want to see what Stredkowski can do, because this is going to be important going forward. We
Yes.
we didn't get it with Turok because he blew him up with the power, and we didn't get it with Balsamon. The only thing we get is him actually protecting his sword for a brief second against Lan, and Lan says, "Oh, someone's been teaching you." That's the extent of Rand can fight with a sword that we have.
Mm.
And we didn't get it in either case that it should have come up in that last episode. So we still don't have that. What can Stredkowski do? We don't know. Maybe they're not confident in his ability. Maybe they don't think he can pull it off. Maybe that's part of the problem. There's
Mm.
so many things that play into this.
Well, theoretically, we will find out in what year and a half. Is that how long it should theoretically take between seasons?
They approved a
I'm not
season 3. I
convinced.
don't know if the writer's strike interfered with it.
Yeah. I'm
Uh,
not convinced there will actually be a season 3. I know they approved it, but
well, to your
Prime
point about
Studios is hemorrhaging
Amazon,
so much money.
yeah,
I'm curious if this is going to keep going.
depends on how much they already had done before this season started and the ratings dropped so much. I think that's
Yeah.
the thing. If it's just editing or anything at this point, then maybe they will. I don't know though, because Warner Brothers canceled, what was it, Batwoman or something
Yeah. The Batwoman
after
movie.
everything was filmed. They still
Yeah.
they still canceled it because they're like, editing's going to cost this much. We're not going to make any money. Yeah.
And to that point, one of the reasons that it was reported, they didn't say out loud, but supposedly one of the reasons Batwoman was canceled is because it was so bad that they were concerned it would damage the brand, the DC brand going forward. I don't know what the contract is for the rights uh, that Prime has for Wheel of Time, but if they have these rights long term and the reception and reaction is so bad, they could make the decision we need a hard reboot because we are damaging the brand.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be logical, and who knows if logic will prevail.
Yeah, and it's so, for season 3, what they could say is we need to get back to the books, but they set so much up wrong
Mm-hmm.
that it can be done. I can actually see ways it can be done. Maybe they could, if anybody's associated with the company, you can give me a call. I can see ways it can be done, but the problem you have there is someone might come across it and watch an episode of season 3 and say it's good, right? And say, oh shoot, well, I need to watch it from the beginning. And they start season 1, and then this isn't what I watched.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about me. I actually read book 3 first, because I found book 3 and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
dragons. I like dragons, and it had nothing to do with dragons. But I still loved the third book so much that I went out and got the first and second book. Had the first and second book sucked, there would have been no continuation for me.
Oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. You just Oh, I'm sorry. I was about to say we need to wrap it up here, but how does Moraine know what a dragon looks like? There aren't dragons.
Yeah, we have an
Nobody
established lore in this whole series, so there could have been like storybook dragons that we don't know about. But
we know what a dragon looks like. And in fact, when they see the actual banner, it is, oh, this must be what a dragon looks like. It's not, oh, that's a dragon. In the book, when they finally see the banner, the sinewy reptilian thing, it's, well, this must be what a dragon is. How the hell does Moraine know? How the hell do the people down in Falm cheering know, oh, that's a dragon? Because they don't actually exist even though this is a fantasy world, they don't exist. And
yeah,
apparently
what you
they
would
didn't
see
exist
is
in
a
the Age of
fiery
Legends.
beast flying up over the city going, I thought we were dead with the armies invading, and now we're really dead. That's what they would have been thinking.
Mm-hmm.
This is something else that's coming to kill us, and it's, who knows, maybe it's a Shan Shin thing, maybe it's a White Cloak thing. We don't know, because all we know is people are killing each other and we're in the middle of it. That's what the people would have been saying.
And here's another thought I hadn't even thought of. Because they're so cheap, they didn't bother to have the Grom or the Rakin or
Racken,
the
yeah, yeah.
what are the cat-like things that they ride that they use as
Oh,
scouts?
I can't remember those.
Uh, but so you didn't have any of those. So other than the Trollocs, we have not seen a single fantastical beast in this fantasy world.
Yeah, and that's the Trollocs that are too small, just like the Ogier.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that cheery note, we've got stuff to do, so we will see y'all next time.
Yep, Renfest this weekend. We'll get everything up before I go,
Yay.
theoretically. Giggity. Uh, Anything else before we go? What's our social episode next time?
I have no idea.
What did I bring
Scott,
up?
what should we talk about Wednesday?
Well, I brought up laws and the freedom versus the
Mhm.
safety of authoritarianism and where the balance might lie. That's a good one to go. We never got to the gender stuff last time that I was complaining about in my
Oh yeah, yeah.
psychology book. So there's always those topics, which I mean, and will the dust will be settling a little bit more on what's happening in the Middle East, which is, it's I know my stance is not the most controversial, except that nobody likes fence sitters, but I'm not really a fence sitter. That's the thing. But if you have to understand nuance to know the difference. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk about it over the weekend. Maybe something will come up. It is the what is it? The Ring of Fire eclipse tomorrow, and we have the Day of
Oh
Jihad
yeah.
today. So we'll see what happens with
Oh
all
goody.
that. The Twitterverse says the world is ending, so uh, it, we might not even see you Tuesday, because maybe the world is over. But
We can only hope.
we can only hope. It will be awesome,
All right.
according to your book you gave me.
Yep. See y'all then.
Later.